Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. It's always wild seeing how far these stories travel. Now, imagine this. Dutch van der Linde suddenly steps into the world of GTA 5. One moment he's strategizing in the quiet, dusty plains of the heartland, and the next he's standing on a crowded Los Santos street, the neon lights glaring, car horns blaring, and sirens echoing off the towering skyscrapers. Dutch blinks, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos, trying to make sense of it. The city smells like gasoline, fried food, and opportunity. Everything he loves and everything he doesn't. There's a rhythm here, a pulse he can almost feel under his boots, but it's alien. Gone are the rolling hills, the campfires, and the simplicity of small-town survival. Here, survival comes at the speed of a stolen supercar and the click of a pistol trigger. Dutch takes a slow step forward, his coat brushing against the pavement, and immediately notices the energy around him. People are running past, some looking at him as if he's a lost tourist, while others don't even register him. He watches a group of street racers peel around a corner, tires squealing, smoke trailing behind them. Dutch smirks slightly, a spark of recognition in the chaos. These folks, they've got spirit, he mutters under his breath. It's different from the outlaw life he knew, but the instincts are the same. It's all about power, influence, and knowing when to act. Every corner Dutch turns reveals a new layer of this city. Luxury cars glide past rundown neighborhoods, high-end boutiques sit side by side with gritty convenience stores, and above it all, helicopters patrol the skyline. Dutch's mind starts to work immediately, piecing together the social hierarchies of Los Santos. Who rules the streets? Who's waiting for the first chance to stab someone in the back? Who's loyal? And who's just playing the part until an opportunity arises? He's in unfamiliar territory, but Dutch van der Linde has never needed familiarity to make his mark. He wanders into an alleyway, curious, observing. A gang of teenagers sprays graffiti over a crumbling brick wall, laughing at their own audacity. Dutch stops and studies them, not just as rebellious kids, but as raw potential, raw energy. In his old world, he could mold loyalty, build respect with charisma and conviction. Could he do the same here? Dutch leans against a dumpster, watching as a group of bikers roar past, leather jackets gleaming under the harsh streetlights. There's a certain poetry in the anarchy, a rhythm that reminds him of the lawless stretches of the frontier. He smiles faintly. Maybe, just maybe, this city can be tamed in the right hands. The first interactions Dutch has are subtle yet telling. A street vendor yells at a passerby, cursing the traffic that has stopped his little cart. Dutch steps closer, tipping his hat and muttering a soft, practiced word to calm the tension. The passerby glares at him, not used to a stranger trying to mediate in the middle of chaos. Dutch chuckles, thinking about how this would have gone down back in the West, probably with a gun drawn, a duel of words, or a charismatic speech by the fire. But he adjusts. He's not just Dutch van der Linde anymore. Here, he needs to learn, to adapt. The city doesn't know him yet, but that's exactly how he likes it. Every step he takes is a study in contrasts. The scent of hot dogs and gasoline mixes with the acrid sting of gunpowder from a distant police skirmish. The roar of engines, the chatter of pedestrians, the blaring music from a nearby club. It's sensory overload. Dutch stops at a street corner, eyes narrowing, as he watches a man in a tailored suit bark orders at a group of gang members. Dutch can feel the tension, the shifting alliances. He's been in leadership before. He knows the signs of ambition, fear, loyalty, and betrayal. Even here, in a world that runs on cell phones, fast cars, and modern weapons, the rules of influence haven't changed. Dutch moves into the heart of downtown, blending in while still standing out. People glance at the long coat, the confident stride, the way his eyes scan everything like he's memorizing the map of a battlefield. He's calculating who to approach, who to observe, who to avoid. There's a story in every face, a strategy in every glance. Dutch sees a gang cornering a store clerk, a quick flash of violence and intimidation. His mind races. In his world, he would step in, offer protection, maybe recruit these people for something bigger. But he's cautious. Los Santos is unforgiving, and a wrong move could mean getting gunned down in an instant. Still, there's a thrill in it, an echo of the life he once led. By the time Dutch reaches the city's central plaza, the sun is beginning to dip below the skyscraper, casting long shadows across the streets. He pauses, taking it all in, the chaos, the opportunity, the endless possibilities that this new world offers. There's a sense of pride in him, subtle but unmistakable. Dutch van der Linde doesn't just survive. He observes, he strategizes, and he plans. Los Santos doesn't know it yet, but a storm has just arrived, and it's wearing a coat and a cunning smile. Dutch doesn't just wander aimlessly. His eyes scan every alleyway, every rooftop, every group of people huddled together like pieces on a chessboard. He notices patterns, the way certain crews give respect to others, the silent hierarchies of the city, the unspoken rules that govern who gets to survive and who doesn't. It's fascinating to him, almost like watching a living organism move and adapt, each street and gang functioning as part of a bigger, chaotic system. Dutch's grin widens. This city is wild, yes, but it's predictable in its unpredictability. And Dutch, he thrives on that. A sudden explosion in the distance draws his attention. A fireball erupts from a convenience store after what appears to be a botched robbery. Dutch instinctively ducks behind a parked car, his body tense, the thrill of danger coursing through his veins. His mind races. In his old world, he'd have rounded up a small crew, planned the perfect escape, perhaps even delivered a stirring speech about freedom and justice. Here, he observes, calculating the risks and the opportunities, who caused it, who will rise in the aftermath. Dutch knows that chaos is never wasted. It's always a tool if you know how to use it. Dutch's first real interaction with a local comes sooner than he expects. A young man on a motorcycle skids to a stop nearby, helmet in hand, staring at Dutch as if sizing him up. "You lost, old man?" the biker asks with a smirk. Dutch tilts his head, studying him carefully. There's arrogance there, but also curiosity. "Depends on who you ask," Dutch replies smoothly, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who's seen more than 100 lifetimes of conflict. The biker laughs, revs his engine, and takes off. But Dutch notices the respect he gained with just a few words. Influence, he realizes, transcends time and place. Walking further into the chaos of the city, Dutch begins to consider how he can leave his mark. He doesn't yet have a crew. He doesn't have the guns or horses he's used to, but he does have his mind. His sharp strategic thinking, his ability to read people, and his charisma. He pauses at a street corner where a small gang is shaking down a hot dog vendor, demanding money in the usual violent way. Dutch steps forward, slow and deliberate. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice calm but commanding. Heads turn, eyes narrowing. "You know, there's another way to handle things, a better way, a way that keeps everyone alive and prosperous." He doesn't get a chance to finish before the gang laughs and shrugs him off, but Dutch doesn't flinch. Planting the seed is all that matters for now. As night falls, Los Santos transforms. Neon lights reflect off wet pavement, music spills from bars, and the city's pulse quickens. Dutch walks through this urban jungle feeling both small and invincible. He's a stranger, yes, but he's also a predator in his element. He observes petty crimes, tense exchanges, and subtle power plays, absorbing everything like a sponge. Every moment is a lesson. Every glance is an opportunity. He even finds himself studying law enforcement. Cops moving in synchronized patterns, watching surveillance cameras, responding to alarms with efficiency he never quite expected. Dutch smirks. In his world, law was negotiable. Here, it's a different kind of obstacle. He takes a moment to pause on a rooftop overlooking Vinewood Boulevard. Cars stream below like rivers of light, helicopters buzz overhead, and the city hums with relentless energy. Dutch's hand drifts to his coat pocket, fingers brushing against nothing. Yet the gesture is instinctual, like checking for a weapon he doesn't have. The thrill of this unfamiliar environment is intoxicating. He knows he can't act recklessly. One wrong move in Los Santos and it's over. But the potential, the opportunity, that's what drives him forward. Dutch begins to sketch mentally the beginnings of a plan. Which gangs can be swayed? Which alliances are worth forming? Where can he strike first to show he's not just another outsider? His first real taste of modern life comes when he enters a small convenience store to grab some food. The fluorescent lights, the automatic doors, and the security cameras make him pause, but he masks it with confidence. Inside, a clerk eyes him suspiciously. Dutch flashes a charming smile, greets him warmly, and in mere minutes has the clerk chatting about the city's best hidden spots, local rumors, and recent gang tensions. Dutch listens intently, storing every piece of information. This is the first step. Understand the city before trying to control it. He leaves with his purchase and a small nod of respect from the clerk, a tiny victory that Dutch savors like a successful heist. Evening stretches into late night, and Dutch finds himself drawn to the edges of Los Santos, the darker neighborhoods, the streets that never sleep. He watches the drug deals, the turf wars, the skirmishes that erupt and vanish like sparks in the dark. Dutch's mind races with possibilities. In his world, the Linde gang thrived on loyalty, strategy, and timing. Could he replicate that here, in a place so different yet so familiar in its chaos? He knows it won't be easy. The rules have changed, the tools are new, and the stakes are higher. But Dutch Linde never backed down from a challenge. Dutch's first hours in Los Santos are a whirlwind of observation and subtle experimentation. He moves like a predator through the streets, blending in while simultaneously standing out. Every flicker of movement, every whispered conversation, every hurried glance from a gang member or passerby is a piece of a puzzle he's determined to solve. He studies the hierarchy of the city's crime scene with the same intensity he once used to study lawmen and rival gangs in the Old West. Here, alliances are temporary, trust is fleeting, and loyalty is measured in seconds. Yet Dutch's mind already begins mapping it all, filing away details like he's planning a massive heist before anyone even realizes he's in the room. A small scuffle erupts outside a neon-lit diner, and Dutch instinctively steps closer. A gang member shoves another, a heated argument about territory escalating fast. Dutch doesn't intervene directly. Not yet. But he positions himself where he can be seen, observing reactions and body language. He notes who's scared, who's aggressive, who holds the attention of the others. Every detail matters. Dutch smiles to himself. It's almost a dance, and he's always been an excellent dancer. Chaos is just another partner in a waltz of strategy, and he intends to lead. By now, he's grown accustomed to the city's strange rhythms. Horns honking, the distant wail of sirens, street performers competing with booming car stereos. It all becomes part of his mental map. Dutch begins to think about how he can carve out influence in a world so unlike his own. The old ways won't work entirely. There are no horses to herd, no campfire speeches to inspire loyalty. But persuasion, cunning, and charisma, those tools never expire. He starts to envision small tests, subtle manipulations to gauge how much control he can exert without drawing deadly attention. Dutch's first attempt comes the following night. He notices a small crew shaking down a drug dealer in an alley. Most bystanders avoid the scene, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. Dutch approaches cautiously, but with an air of authority that immediately draws attention. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice calm yet commanding, "perhaps there's a way we can handle this, with less blood and more profit." The gang members look at him like he's an odd relic from another time. One of them laughs, tossing a cigarette to the ground. But Dutch doesn't flinch. He studies them, reads their body language, and begins planting subtle ideas. Small seeds of doubt, hints at loyalty, whispers of strategy. By the time he leaves, the gang is more curious than hostile, and Dutch knows he's made his first impression. Meanwhile, the city itself is revealing its secrets. Dutch discovers the modern methods of power, digital surveillance, stolen vehicles, cybercrime, and the constant presence of law enforcement. He watches security cameras, follows patterns of police patrols, and notes the vulnerabilities in gang territories. It's not the same as a well-planned train robbery in the countryside, but the principles are identical. Timing, influence, and knowledge of your opponent always win out. Dutch can see it now. If he plays his cards right, Los Santos could become his new frontier. Dutch also begins testing the locals in subtler ways. He strikes up conversations with street vendors, listens to rumors in seedy bars, and even casually engages with random pedestrians. Everyone has information, and Dutch absorbs it like a sponge. He notes gang tensions, territory lines, and the small cracks in the city's criminal order. With each encounter, he calculates. Who could be useful? Who might resist? Who could be persuaded to join his cause? Dutch van der Linde is thinking in 3 steps ahead, even in a city where danger lurks around every corner. By the end of his first night, Dutch has gathered enough insight to start forming a plan. He knows that brute force alone won't succeed here. Los Santos is too crowded, too fast-moving, too unpredictable. But influence, manipulation, and clever alliances, that's his strength, and he can already see the possibilities taking shape. Dutch pauses on a rooftop, looking out over the city that never sleeps. The neon lights shimmer like a modern campfire, the chaos beneath like a river he can navigate with skill and patience. He smiles faintly, the old fire of ambition flickering in his eyes. This city may be new, but Dutch van der Linde has never been one to shy away from the unknown. And as he stands there, the hum of Los Santos stretching endlessly before him, Dutch begins to whisper to himself, almost like a promise. This place, it's ours for the taking. All we need is a plan, a little loyalty, and the courage to act. The night wraps around him like a cloak, the possibilities endless, and Dutch knows that the first move is always the hardest, but also the most exhilarating. The next morning, Dutch wakes to the early hum of Los Santos sirens, car engines, and distant chatter creating a strange kind of music, one he's already starting to understand. He doesn't rush into action. Instead, he observes. Dutch knows that a city like this rewards patience. The first move must be calculated, precise, and impactful. He surveys the streets from a high vantage point, tracing gang territories, noting the patrols of law enforcement, and identifying weak points in the criminal network. Every piece of the city is a puzzle, and Dutch is eager to fit the pieces together. Dutch's first deliberate step into the underworld comes in the form of a small, seemingly inconsequential interaction. He notices a group of low-level street hustlers arguing over a stolen stash. Most would see this as mere squabbling, but Dutch sees an opportunity. He approaches confidently, speaking in a tone that commands attention without threatening violence. "Gentlemen," he begins, his eyes glinting with charisma, "there's a way to make this work for all of us. Trust me. I've seen what loyalty and strategy can do." The hustlers exchange skeptical glances, but something about Dutch's presence, the combination of charm, confidence, and sheer magnetism, makes them pause. For a moment, Dutch imagines a small crew forming around him, a microcosm of what the van der Linde gang once was. Dutch doesn't stop there. He starts leaving small marks of influence wherever he goes. A word here, a suggestion there, always planting seeds of curiosity and respect. He notices how certain gang members react to his voice, his gestures, the way he carries himself. Some are intrigued, others dismissive, and a few, the type who are ambitious yet cautious, linger on the edges, watching, listening, waiting to see if Dutch's confidence holds weight. Dutch recognizes potential when he sees it. He knows that loyalty isn't demanded. It's earned through calculated moves and subtle demonstrations of competence. Even as he begins these initial maneuvers, Dutch cannot ignore the city itself. Los Santos is alive, almost sentient in its chaos. Traffic patterns, gang movements, and even the rhythm of nightlife become part of his mental map. Dutch walks down the bustling streets, taking note of alleys that could be used for ambushes, rooftops ideal for observation, and intersections where power shifts daily depending on who controls the corner. The city is a game board, and Dutch is already planning several moves ahead. Every glance from a passerby, every snippet of overheard conversation adds another layer to his understanding. By mid-morning, Dutch has identified his first potential allies, small-time criminals overlooked by the larger gangs who are hungry for influence and respect. He approaches them subtly, offering guidance, listening more than he speaks, and demonstrating competence in ways that don't provoke immediate suspicion. Dutch is patient. He knows the value of earning trust slowly. The city isn't won by force alone, he mutters to himself. It's won by the mind, by knowing who to trust and when to strike. The newcomers are drawn in, intrigued by his charisma and unusual perspective, not fully aware of the man's cunning, yet undeniable pull. By late afternoon, Dutch's plan begins to crystallize. He envisions a network, small at first, then expanding, a series of calculated alliances, minor heists to prove competence, and subtle manipulations of the city's criminal hierarchy. Every action is designed to test loyalty, reveal weaknesses, and assert influence without overtly challenging the established powers too soon. Dutch smiles faintly. It's almost like preparing for a chess match where the pieces move themselves once the strategy is in place. Los Santos may be modern, but the rules of influence, power, and leadership are timeless. As evening descends, Dutch moves through the city with purpose. He revisits location he scoped out earlier, checking for patterns, adjusting mental maps, and refining his approach. There's a rhythm to his movement, a precision in his observations, and an energy in his ambition that feels electric. Dutch is no longer merely surviving in Los Santos. He's engaging with it, learning it, and quietly shaping the first threads of a web that could eventually make him a force to be reckoned with. And yet, even as he plans, Dutch can't ignore the underlying danger. Los Santos doesn't forgive mistakes. Rival gangs, ambitious criminals, and vigilant law enforcement all pose threats. But Dutch van der Linde thrives on calculated risk. He has always believed that fortune favors the bold, and this city, with all its noise, neon, and chaos, is just another frontier to conquer. Standing atop a high-rise at night, gazing at the sprawling streets below, Dutch allows himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The city is vast, unpredictable, and alive. But so is he. And if there's one thing Dutch knows with absolute certainty, it's that where there's chaos, there's opportunity. The first segment closes with Dutch van der Linde looking out over Los Santos, a city unfamiliar yet full of potential. The lights flicker below, gangs move in shifting patterns, and somewhere, Trevor, Franklin, or Michael may already be feeling the ripple of a new player in their midst. Dutch whispers under his breath, a grin spreading across his face. This city isn't ready for me, but it will be. And with that, the stage is set. Dutch has arrived, and Los Santos will never be the same. Dutch van der Linde had spent his first night in Los Santos surveying the streets, studying the chaos, and quietly planting the seeds of influence. Now, the real challenge begins. The people who actually run this city, the ones whose names carry weight, the ones whose actions shape the criminal landscape. Dutch isn't just in a new world. He's about to meet the legends of Los Santos themselves. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are more than characters in a game of power. They are forces, each unpredictable, each with their own methods, and each with their own view of the city that Dutch is now walking through as if he already owns it. Dutch first encounters Trevor. It happens on the outskirts of sandy shores, where Trevor's erratic energy dominates every inch of the desert, and the air itself seems to vibrate with danger. Trevor is tearing through a small gang's hideout, shouting in manic delight as chaos erupts around him. Dutch watches from a safe distance, observing the raw, untamed violence with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. He recognizes something familiar in Trevor, the same chaotic charisma that once drove his own gang forward. But Trevor's lack of subtlety is alarming. Dutch steps closer, letting his presence be known, and the desert suddenly feels smaller, as if the two men's energies are colliding. Trevor turns, squinting at the stranger in the long coat, his grin widening into that unhinged smile. "Who the hell are you?" he demands, arms spreading wide as if to embrace or attack. Dutch tilts his head, studying him carefully, and responds with the kind of measured confidence that only someone like him can carry. "I'm Dutch. I've seen men like you before, and I've found they can be useful if guided correctly." Trevor laughs, a manic sound that bounces off the barren walls of sandy shores, clearly entertained but unconvinced. Dutch notices the flicker of respect in Trevor's eyes, buried beneath the madness, and he knows this will be a delicate dance. From the desert, Dutch moves into the city, seeking Michael. The first meeting is in Vinewood, near one of the luxurious estates that Michael has meticulously curated. Dutch approaches the world of wealth and calculated crime with caution, aware that Michael operates differently than Trevor. He observes the meticulous planning of Michael's heists, the polished execution, the way people respond to him not out of fear, but out of a begrudging respect for competence. Dutch introduces himself in a casual, confident manner, letting Michael size him up as he always does with new players in his world. There is a brief silence, the kind that carries tension, until Dutch breaks it with a sharp, almost philosophical observation about leadership and loyalty. Michael's eyes narrow, intrigued but wary, and Dutch immediately senses the mental chess game beginning. Michael may not be chaotic like Trevor, but he is no fool. Dutch knows that in order to influence him, he must appeal to the part of Michael that values intelligence, strategy, and control over brute force. Dutch smiles internally. He loves a challenge, and Michael represents a sophisticated one. Franklin comes next, a different kind of puzzle entirely. Dutch first sees him in the midst of his own hustle, navigating gang territory with the street-smart precision of someone born into survival. Dutch observes from a distance, noting Franklin's confidence, his adaptability, and the subtle charm that allows him to influence his peers without ever raising his voice. When Dutch finally approaches, he uses a softer, more persuasive tone, speaking of Franklin's ambitions and hunger for something greater. Dutch can see the gears turning in Franklin's head immediately. The calculation, the weighing of risk and reward, the instinct to test whether Dutch is a friend, a threat, or just another charlatan. Franklin doesn't give much away at first, but Dutch can feel the curiosity. He knows that in time, Franklin could become one of his most valuable assets if guided carefully. Dutch's mind races with possibilities, already seeing the potential crew forming in his mind. A fusion of his old world strategies with the talents of this new generation of criminals. The three encounters are distinct but interconnected. Trevor represents chaos and untamed potential, Michael embodies calculated strategy and controlled execution, and Franklin offers adaptability and street-level intelligence. Dutch begins to map their personalities as if they are pieces on a board, understanding how to push, pull, and align them to serve a larger goal. He walks through Los Santos with a new perspective, seeing not just the city, but the people as nodes of influence and opportunity. Every gesture, every glance, every minor interaction carries meaning. Dutch is learning how to navigate the social architecture of this world just as he once navigated the wild frontier. The first signs of friction appear quickly. Dutch's presence challenges Trevor's authority in the desert, sparks a spark of unease in Michael's calculated world, and tests Franklin's loyalty to his current crew. Dutch thrives in this tension. He knows that disruption is the first step to leadership, that shaking up the established order creates openings for someone daring enough to seize them. He watches, listens, and subtly manipulates, never overreaching, but always asserting his presence. Los Santos is waking up to Dutch van der Linde, whether its residents realize it yet or not. Dutch doesn't waste time letting the first impressions fade. He understands that influence is built not only through words, but through observation, timing, and small, calculated gestures. Over the next few days, he begins moving fluidly between Trevor, Michael, and Franklin, learning their routines, testing their patience, and subtly probing for weaknesses. With Trevor, Dutch embraces the chaos. He participates in reckless stunts, follows him into volatile situations, and demonstrates a mastery of strategy even amid apparent madness. Trevor, initially suspicious of Dutch's composed demeanor, begins to see a kindred spirit, someone who understands that rules exist only to be bent or broken. Dutch doesn't try to dominate Trevor immediately. Instead, he lets Trevor's energy flow while gently guiding it, planting ideas about structure and planning where previously there was only raw instinct. Michael proves to be a different kind of challenge entirely. Dutch approaches him not with force, but with stories, parables, and analogies that resonate with Michael's own experiences. He speaks of loyalty, betrayal, and the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility, drawing comparisons between the frontier life he once led and the criminal underworld Michael navigates. Michael listens, eyes narrowed, occasionally cutting Dutch off with his trademark skepticism, but Dutch senses the curiosity beneath it. Every nod, every frown, every carefully phrased question is a small victory. He knows that Michael thrives on logic, structure, and foresight, and Dutch begins to frame his suggestions in ways that appeal to those values, hinting at high-reward heists and strategies that require cunning rather than chaos. Slowly, Dutch begins weaving the first threads of influence into Michael's meticulously ordered world. Franklin is perhaps the easiest to engage on a personal level, though no less important strategically. Dutch recognizes Franklin's hunger, not just for money or status, but for opportunity and autonomy. Dutch speaks to that ambition, offering mentorship veiled in casual conversation, giving Franklin glimpses of how leadership and vision can elevate him beyond the limits of his current crew. Dutch watches closely as Franklin processes the possibilities, testing his loyalty and curiosity with subtle challenges, suggesting actions, framing situations, and leaving the choices in Franklin's hands. Dutch knows better than to push too hard. Ambition without guidance can backfire. Instead, he guides through influence, planting seeds that will grow if nurtured correctly. The first tensions begin to surface naturally. Trevor, protective of his territory and his erratic sense of authority, bristles at Dutch's calm, deliberate planning. Michael's ego and need for control create quiet friction. He respects Dutch's intelligence but resents the idea of sharing influence or territory. Franklin, caught between admiration and caution, watches the exchanges closely, learning the dynamics of this new player without fully committing. Dutch thrives on these tensions. He understands that disruption creates openings, that the right word or gesture at the right time can turn skepticism into loyalty and suspicion into alliance. Each interaction becomes a subtle negotiation, a chess move with consequences that ripple across the city. Dutch begins orchestrating scenarios to test each of them further. A small, staged confrontation in a gang-controlled area, allows Trevor to flex his chaotic energy while Dutch demonstrates restraint and foresight. A minor heist is suggested to Michael, carefully designed to appeal to his love of precision and clever planning. Franklin is given a street-level challenge, a small mission that tests his judgment and adaptability. Dutch watches their responses closely, noting who hesitates, who acts rashly, and who adjusts instinctively. Every detail informs his growing understanding of how to manipulate the city's existing power structure to his advantage. Even as Dutch works to gain footing with the trio, he cannot ignore the city itself. He studies the interplay between gangs, police patrols, and the criminal elite, using the interactions with Trevor, Michael, and Franklin as both a learning opportunity and a testing ground. Los Santos is revealing itself to Dutch not just as a city of crime, but as a living network of influence and power. He begins mentally cataloging alliances, rivalries, and exploitable tensions, knowing that the right combination of persuasion, intimidation, and strategic risk could give him a foothold no one else anticipated. By the end of these first few days, Dutch has made a subtle but unmistakable impression. Trevor grudgingly respects him, intrigued by his combination of chaos and calculated foresight. Michael is cautious but undeniably curious, fascinated by Dutch's ability to frame strategy in terms that resonate with his own experience. Franklin is eager, willing to follow Dutch's guidance if only to see where it might lead. Dutch has planted the first seeds of influence, tested loyalties, and begun weaving a web that could grow into something significant. Standing atop a high-rise at night, overlooking Los Santos with its neon glow and endless motion, Dutch reflects on the dynamics he has begun to manipulate. The city hums beneath him like a living organism, and he can sense the first subtle shifts in power. His presence has already created ripples. A glance from Trevor, a question from Michael, a nod from Franklin. All indicators that Dutch van der Linde is no longer just an observer. He is a player, one who understands that patience, timing, and charisma are as dangerous and powerful as any weapon. Dutch whispers to himself with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the game has only just begun, and the city is about to feel the true force of his ambition. Dutch's presence in Los Santos begins to stir subtle unease among the city's established players. Trevor, despite his chaotic nature, starts noticing that Dutch isn't just another outsider. He observes patterns, predicts outcomes, and can channel raw energy into calculated action. In the desert, where Trevor thrives on unpredictability, Dutch carefully orchestrates small interventions, subtly guiding Trevor away from needless destruction while planting ideas about more structured chaos. Trevor, sensing Dutch's capability, becomes both intrigued and defensive. There's an unspoken challenge in the air. Who truly understands the art of controlled chaos? Trevor respects audacity, but Dutch brings a discipline to madness that unsettles him. Michael, meanwhile, views Dutch differently. In Vinewood's high-rise offices and quiet suburban streets, Michael is accustomed to planning with precision, trusting only a select few and controlling every variable. Dutch disrupts that. He enters conversations with knowledge, intuition, and a perspective shaped by years of survival in lawless lands. Dutch's words are carefully chosen, blending philosophy with practical strategy, illustrating how loyalty and timing can override brute force. Michael's defenses are strong, but Dutch's charisma works subtly, planting seeds of curiosity. The tension is tangible. Every meeting, every handshake, every shared glance carries layers of unspoken negotiation. Michael's mind races, evaluating Dutch's intentions and weighing the potential risk versus reward. Franklin offers a different dynamic entirely. On the streets of Los Santos, Franklin navigates ambition and survival with finesse, making his mark in a world that often underestimates him. Dutch approaches him with a mentorship-like tone, speaking to ambition, vision, and the possibilities that exist beyond the immediate struggle for territory and money. Franklin listens, intrigued by Dutch's ideas and stories of loyalty, leadership, and strategic thinking. Dutch doesn't push, he guides, offering opportunities for Franklin to prove himself while subtly shaping his perspective. Dutch recognizes that Franklin's adaptability and street-level knowledge make him an ideal asset in the network he's beginning to build. With the three interactions forming a triangular web of tension and curiosity, Dutch begins orchestrating scenarios to test alliances and loyalty. He arranges small, controlled heists that require cooperation between the three men, giving each a challenge that highlights their strengths and weaknesses. Trevor's impulsive nature is tested against Dutch's patience. Michael's need for meticulous planning is challenged by sudden unpredictability, and Franklin's street-smart instincts are pushed into high-pressure situations. Dutch observes from the shadows, noting reactions, adjusting his approach, and ensuring that each outcome serves a larger purpose. The city itself becomes a stage for Dutch's experiments, a place where chaos, ambition, and strategy collide. Subtle manipulation becomes Dutch's primary tool. He allows small conflicts to flare, then intervenes just enough to guide the results. Trevor and Michael clash over approaches. Franklin mediates with caution, and Dutch remains the calm, calculating presence that turns disputes into opportunities. He doesn't dominate, he orchestrates. A glance here, a suggestion there, and he nudges the trio into situations where they learn to rely on his insight, even if reluctantly. Dutch's methods are invisible but effective, creating dependency without forcing allegiance. By observing reactions, he gathers data on their motivations, fears, and loyalty, preparing for the moment when he can leverage it for more significant influence. Dutch also begins to exploit the city itself, identifying strategic locations, weakly controlled territories, and key figures who can be swayed to his advantage. He watches Trevor claim desert strongholds, Michael orchestrate heists with precision crews, and Franklin navigate street-level power plays. Dutch recognizes patterns, opportunities where intervention could yield loyalty or fear, where a well-timed suggestion could turn rivals into allies, and where a calculated display of force could cement his growing reputation. Los Santos, in all its sprawling chaos, becomes a game board, and Dutch sees every street, every alley, every rooftop as a piece he can move with purpose. At night, Dutch reflects on the progress he's made. The subtle influence he's exerted over Trevor, Michael, and Franklin has not gone unnoticed. Each man is aware to some degree that Dutch is different, yet none fully comprehend the depth of his strategy. Dutch smiles, knowing the tension he has cultivated is exactly what he needs. He doesn't just observe Los Santos. He shapes it, bending interactions, testing loyalties, and planting the seeds of a power network that could rival anything the city has seen. Dutch van der Linde has arrived, and already the foundations of influence are forming around him, unseen but undeniable. Even in moments of quiet reflection, Dutch calculates the next moves. Who can be persuaded first? How can Trevor's chaos be harnessed without losing control? How can Michael's precision be leveraged for maximum effect? Franklin's ambition must be guided without breaking his loyalty to his current crew. Each consideration, each plan, each potential action is carefully stored in Dutch's mind, ready for deployment. Los Santos may be loud, chaotic, and unpredictable, but Dutch knows that patience and strategy will always prevail. By the end of this phase, Dutch has not only met the city's central figures, but has subtly begun to influence them. The balance of power is shifting. The dynamics between Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are being tested, and Dutch stands as the catalyst of change. The city has begun to acknowledge his presence, even if they don't yet understand him. Dutch van der Linde is no longer a newcomer. He is a strategist, an observer, and an emerging force in a city that thrives on unpredictability and ambition. The stage is set, the pieces are moving, and Dutch knows that the real game is only beginning. As the days progress, Dutch's presence in Los Santos begins to feel inevitable. The city's rhythm shifts subtly around him, like water flowing around a rock, almost imperceptibly at first, but with undeniable effect over time. Dutch doesn't force change, he nudges it. He arranges encounters where Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are compelled to cooperate, engineering circumstances that test their limits and reveal their strengths. The desert chaos of Trevor's domain, Michael's meticulous urban planning, and Franklin's street-level maneuvering are combined into small, orchestrated operations that challenge the trio to work together, even against their initial instincts. Dutch watches these interactions closely, noting which methods inspire trust, which provoke resistance, and which elicit grudging respect. In one such operation, Dutch suggests a minor heist in the city's industrial district, ostensibly to acquire supplies for an unrelated goal. Trevor wants to go in guns blazing, Michael demands precise planning, and Franklin moves pragmatically between the two extremes. Dutch allows the tension to build, giving each man room to assert his instincts, while he quietly orchestrates the scenario to ensure maximum engagement. By subtly highlighting the necessity of collaboration and emphasizing the shared reward, Dutch begins to transform chaos into strategy. Trevor starts to follow Dutch's lead without realizing it. Michael concedes small details of control to achieve the mission, and Franklin adapts on the fly, building trust and observing Dutch's methods. Dutch thrives on these moments. He knows that trust, loyalty, and influence are not granted freely. They are earned through demonstration, subtle guidance, and the careful orchestration of success. By letting Trevor, Michael, and Franklin experience victory under his subtle manipulation, Dutch proves his value without openly asserting authority. Each man begins to see Dutch not just as an outsider, but as a strategist capable of understanding and manipulating the unique strengths of each player. Small victories compound into credibility. Credibility fosters curiosity, and curiosity becomes a seed of influence. Even as Dutch weaves these connections, he remains acutely aware of the city around him. Los Santos is alive with opportunity. Gang wars erupting in back alleys, heists being planned in corporate offices, corruption seeping through City Hall, and police forces constantly reacting to chaos. Dutch begins mapping these dynamics in his mind, identifying where influence can be leveraged, where fear can be used, and where alliances might be formed to cement his position. He recognizes that this city, despite its modern trappings, obeys the same fundamental rules he has always known: control the people, manipulate the resources, and exploit the weaknesses in the system. Dutch begins to introduce subtle philosophy into his interactions, speaking to Trevor about the art of controlled chaos, to Michael about strategy and foresight, and to Franklin about ambition and opportunity. Each conversation is tailored to the individual, designed to provoke reflection and action. Trevor laughs at Dutch's analogies, initially dismissing them, but gradually begins to recognize the logic behind the words. Michael challenges Dutch's statements, testing his knowledge and patience, but finds himself forced to admit the insight they contain. Franklin listens quietly, absorbing the lessons, recognizing the possibilities for growth and power if he aligns with Dutch's vision. As the group continues to navigate the city together, Dutch orchestrates moments that test loyalty and reinforce hierarchy. A minor gang dispute in Davis, a confrontation over a high-value shipment in East Vinewood, and even a carefully planned encounter with law enforcement all serve as exercises in collaboration and trust building. Dutch is meticulous. Every decision, every word, every pause is calculated to reinforce his role as the subtle guiding force, the strategist in the shadows. By the time the trio realizes it, they are already operating within a framework Dutch has begun to establish. The culmination of these efforts comes during a small-scale heist that Dutch has designed specifically to test the trio's ability to cooperate under pressure. Trevor's unpredictability, Michael's precision, and Franklin's adaptability are pushed to the limit. Dutch allows them space to make mistakes, intervening only when necessary to prevent disaster. The heist succeeds, thanks in part to Dutch's interventions, but the credit is shared, leaving each man both satisfied and slightly indebted to his presence. Dutch watches from a distance, noting the subtle shift in dynamics. Respect, curiosity, and even a measure of dependence have begun to replace initial skepticism and hostility. As night falls over Los Santos, Dutch reflects on his progress. The first true alliances have been formed, the initial fractures in trust have been navigated, and the foundations of influence are solidifying. He knows the path ahead will not be easy. Rival gangs, law enforcement, and the city's unpredictable chaos will all challenge him. But Dutch van der Linde has always thrived in adversity. The lessons of the frontier, the strategies of the past, and his uncanny ability to manipulate the human behavior have been transported into a new world, a modern city filled with opportunity and danger in equal measure. Standing atop a high-rise overlooking the neon glow of the city, Dutch allows himself a rare moment of satisfaction. He can see the subtle changes he has inspired. Trevor's chaotic energy guided by purpose, Michael's meticulous planning expanded to include unforeseen variables, and Franklin's adaptability sharpened by observation and experience. Dutch whispers to himself, a quiet promise that carries weight. This city isn't ready for me, but it will learn. The night hums with possibility, the city's chaos blending with Dutch's calculated strategy. In Los Santos, Dutch van der Linde has planted the seeds of influence, and the game has only just begun. Dutch van der Linde had survived the Wild West, commanded loyalty with fire and persuasion, and orchestrated complex plans in a world without traffic lights, surveillance cameras, or the hum of neon. But Los Santos is different. The rules have changed, the tools are modern, and the pace is unforgiving. Dutch stands in the middle of downtown, surrounded by speeding cars, flashing billboards, and civilians glued to their phones. And for the first time he pauses, studying this new frontier with the intensity of a general surveying a battlefield. Every corner, every alley, every rooftop is a potential opportunity or danger, and Dutch knows he must adapt, not only to survive but to thrive. His first lesson comes with transportation. Horses are gone, replaced by cars, motorcycles, and helicopters that scream across the city. Dutch initially struggles to reconcile his old instincts with modern mechanics. A stolen sports car feels alien beneath his hands, the engine roaring like a beast he doesn't fully control. Dutch grits his teeth, feeling the familiar thrill of speed and danger, but realizing he must master this metal beast in order to move freely across Los Santos. He begins experimenting with different vehicles, from low-riders in Vinewood to high-speed supercars in downtown Vinewood, each teaching him lessons about acceleration, handling, and timing. Dutch quickly recognizes that mobility is power, and in a city this sprawling, controlling movement is as important as controlling people. Next comes the weapons. Dutch has always been a master with firearms, knives, and the occasional cannon, but modern crime brings new challenges. Semi-automatic rifles, pistols with laser sights, grenades that explode with a whisper, and even tactical gear for protection are a far cry from the revolvers and shotguns he's used to. Dutch handles them all with cautious fascination, testing recoil, range, and efficiency. He practices in abandoned warehouses, studying ballistics, and learning the balance between stealth and aggression. Each session sharpens his instincts, and Dutch begins to see the potential in combining his old-world strategies with modern weaponry. He can orchestrate chaos with precision now, blending calculation with firepower in a way that even Trevor finds impressive. Technology is the final frontier. Dutch quickly realizes that Los Santos isn't just a city, it's a network of information. Surveillance cameras, GPS tracking, encrypted phones, and even social media create a new battlefield. At first, Dutch is wary. In his world, anonymity and face-to-face persuasion were all that mattered. But he adapts, learning to use devices to gather intelligence, manipulate situations remotely, and stay several steps ahead of both rivals and law enforcement. Dutch studies security systems, hacks, and digital maps, blending these modern tools seamlessly with the leadership skills he's honed for decades. Information becomes a weapon just as potent as any firearm, and Dutch is quick to wield it. Dutch's adaptation isn't just practical, it's psychological. He observes the habits of Los Santos criminals, law enforcement, and everyday citizens, recognizing patterns and behaviors he can exploit. Trevor's impulsivity, Michael's precision, and Franklin's street savvy provide him with live case studies in human behavior. Dutch experiments with influence in this modern world, testing how intimidation, persuasion, and incentive translate when the stakes are measured not in duels and campfires, but in money transfers, stolen vehicles, and social leverage. He begins creating a mental framework for modern crime, where every action has a ripple, every decision carries consequences, and every ally can be a resource if handled correctly. The first tangible test of Dutch's modern adaptation comes when he orchestrates a minor cyber-assisted heist. Using a combination of Franklin's street-level knowledge, Michael's planning skills, Trevor's willingness to embrace chaos, and his own strategic oversight, Dutch coordinates the team to hit a high-security armored car route. He manages every detail, from timing to entry and exit, blending traditional observation with modern tools like GPS tracking and surveillance disruption. The result is seamless execution, a combination of old-school intuition and new-school technology. Dutch watches with satisfaction as the heist unfolds perfectly, the team operating as he subtly guides them. It's proof that adaptation is not only possible, but essential for survival in Los Santos. Dutch also begins to experiment with urban intelligence networks. He cultivates contacts, informants, and street-level allies who feed him information about gang movements, police patrols, and upcoming criminal opportunities. Dutch treats this as a modern version of his old frontier reconnaissance, analyzing data points, memorizing patterns, and predicting outcomes before anyone else can. The city becomes a living chessboard, and Dutch moves unseen, anticipating counter-moves, adjusting strategies, and positioning himself to extract maximum advantage with minimal risk. Every tip, every overheard conversation, every observed detail is a potential weapon in his arsenal. By the end of these first weeks, Dutch is transformed. The Wild West outlaw has become a strategist for a modern criminal city. He walks the streets with confidence, driving cars, handling firearms, using technology, and orchestrating both small and complex operations. The people of Los Santos, from street-level hustlers to seasoned criminals, begin noticing him. Rumors circulate, a stranger with uncanny insight, capable of orchestrating events without obvious effort, someone who commands attention without demanding it. Dutch smiles quietly, knowing the groundwork is being laid. Adaptation is more than survival. It is dominance in a world that doesn't yet recognize his presence. Dutch's understanding of modern crime deepens rapidly, and with it, his confidence grows. He begins to see Los Santos not as a chaotic, disconnected city, but as a network of opportunity, each district with its own rules, each gang with its own strengths and weaknesses, each criminal and lawman a piece on a board he is learning to dominate. The more he observes, the more he adapts his old strategies to modern tools. He notices how a well-timed traffic jam can redirect police patrols, how social media rumors can manipulate public perception, and how surveillance cameras, when understood, can become blind spots to be exploited. Every detail, no matter how small, becomes part of a strategy that blends intuition with technology. Dutch begins to put this knowledge into practice with small-scale modern operations. He organizes a series of vehicle heists, testing the limits of speed, timing, and coordination with Trevor, Michael, and Franklin. Trevor thrives on the adrenaline of chaos. Michael ensures every step is calculated with precision, and Franklin uses his street knowledge to navigate unpredictable elements. Dutch orchestrates the missions in a way that allows each man to shine, reinforcing their trust and reliance on his leadership. By blending old-world foresight with modern execution, Dutch demonstrates that strategy is timeless. Only the tools have changed. The most illuminating lesson comes with urban infiltration. Dutch observes how high-security facilities operate, noting the presence of cameras, guards, motion detectors, and digital locks. Initially, he is cautious, aware that this is unlike the open plains where visibility was limited and escape routes were natural. But he adapts quickly, studying patterns, time and movements, and using modern technology to his advantage. A laptop becomes a tool for reconnaissance, a stolen ID card a key to opportunity, and the flow of information becomes just as lethal as any firearm. Dutch realizes that in Los Santos, information is power, and power is control. Even Dutch's psychological approach evolves. He begins manipulating modern criminals in ways that feel natural but are calculated with precision. Small favors, well-timed warnings, and subtle displays of competence earn him credibility among street-level operators. Dutch recognizes the importance of perception. The right words, delivered at the right time, can turn skepticism into trust. Trevor's impulsive loyalty, Michael's respect for skill, and Franklin's ambition all respond differently to Dutch's guidance, but each is influenced by it. By blending observation with charisma, Dutch crafts an environment where people act in his interest without even realizing it. One pivotal operation cements Dutch's adaptation, a coordinated heist combining traditional skills with modern tools. He orchestrates a multi-step plan involving vehicle theft, surveillance disruption, and precise timing to intercept a high-value target. Trevor handles the chaos, Michael manages the logistics, Franklin navigates the streets, and Dutch coordinates from both distance and direct oversight. Every moment of the mission tests their adaptability, communication, and trust. Dutch's leadership is subtle but unmistakable. He guides the outcome without overtly controlling it, ensuring that success feels earned by the team while simultaneously reinforcing his influence. The heist is a success, executed with a precision that surprises even Michael, a thrill that excites Trevor, and a lesson that sharpens Franklin's instincts. Dutch observes their reactions carefully, noting not only the immediate success, but also the changes in dynamics between them. Trust is growing, reliance is forming, and Dutch's presence becomes an unspoken constant. He knows that influence is strongest when it feels voluntary, when people believe they are choosing to follow rather than being commanded. This understanding is as critical in Los Santos as any skill with a firearm or a stolen vehicle. Dutch also begins experimenting with modern communication networks. He taps into digital radios, encrypted phones, and even social media chatter, blending old-school reconnaissance with modern intelligence. He uses these channels to predict movements, identify rival targets, and subtly influence events without ever being physically present. Dutch realizes that distance is no longer a barrier. Influence can be exerted in real time with minimal risk and with maximum effect. The modern criminal world is faster, more complex, and more interconnected, but Dutch adapts swiftly, turning these challenges into advantages. By the end of these first operations, Dutch has effectively demonstrated that the principles of leadership, strategy, and persuasion are timeless. Modern crime may rely on technology, vehicles, and surveillance, but the fundamentals of human behavior, loyalty, ambition, fear, and respect, remain unchanged. Dutch van der Linde, armed with old instincts and newly acquired tools, has transformed into a strategist perfectly suited for the modern criminal environment. Los Santos is no longer just a city. It is a living, manipulable network, and Dutch has begun to master it. Dutch's confidence in navigating modern crime continues to grow. but he knows that influence is never static. It must be constantly reinforced and expanded. The city of Los Santos, with its ever-shifting alliances and endless opportunities, becomes his testing ground. He begins orchestrating more complex operations, blending old-world intuition with modern tools to manipulate events without revealing his hand. Dutch understands that subtlety is now as valuable as firepower, and he uses it to create ripples that draw attention to his skills while avoiding unnecessary confrontation. One of Dutch's most striking adaptations is his ability to exploit rivalries within the city. He observes tensions between gangs, the competition for territory, and the friction between criminal crews and law enforcement. Dutch subtly intervenes, steering conflicts in ways that benefit him and his growing network. A minor skirmish in Davis becomes an opportunity to showcase Trevor's chaotic power under guidance. A mismanaged deal in East Vinewood demonstrates Michael's meticulous planning, and a street-level robbery highlights Franklin's adaptability. Each incident strengthens his credibility, subtly shaping the perceptions of those around him. Dutch does not merely participate. He orchestrates, turning chaos into advantage without overt domination. Dutch also begins leveraging technology more aggressively. He observes the city's surveillance infrastructure, studying camera placements, patrol patterns, and digital monitoring systems. Using hacked phones, traffic data, and insider tips, he predicts rival movements and law enforcement responses before they happen. Dutch begins integrating modern information networks into his strategy, blending traditional observation with digital foresight. The city becomes a living map in his mind, each district a node, each patrol a predictable variable, each rumor a potential lever for influence. Dutch realizes that while Los Santos is fast and complex, it is not chaotic. It is a system waiting to be understood, manipulated, and mastered. Simultaneously, Dutch experiments with more psychological strategies, recognizing that influence in Los Santos relies heavily on perception. He plants rumors, subtly nudges rivalries, and carefully manages how he is perceived by Trevor, Michael, Franklin, and other street-level players. A well-placed comment in a bar, an offhand remark to a gang member, or a small demonstration of skill creates the illusion of control and inspires respect. Dutch observes reaction meticulously, adjusting his approach to ensure that everyone begins to see him not just as a stranger or an opportunist, but as someone whose presence alters the balance of power. His reputation begins to precede him in whispers and cautious glances. As Dutch grows more comfortable with the modern tools at his disposal, he begins orchestrating multi-layered operations that challenge his new team in unprecedented ways. One such operation involves coordinating a high-value drug transport through multiple checkpoints, requiring Trevor's daring, Michael's precision, Franklin's navigation, and Dutch's oversight. Each move is calculated, each contingency anticipated, and each team member's unique strengths leveraged to maximum effect. Dutch does not micromanage. Instead, he nudges outcomes with minimal interference, allowing the team to feel ownership while ensuring the operation succeeds flawlessly. The results leave the trio both impressed and slightly wary. They are beginning to recognize Dutch's unmatched strategic mind. Dutch also adapts his leadership style to fit modern expectations. Unlike the frontier, where charisma and speeches could command loyalty instantly, Los Santos demands subtle persuasion, visible competence, and consistent results. Dutch integrates these lessons, blending motivational insights, strategic demonstrations, and carefully orchestrated successes to reinforce his role. Trevor's chaotic respect, Michael's calculated admiration, and Franklin's aspirational loyalty become the foundation for a modernized crew that functions under Dutch's unseen hand. He recognizes that in this city, people follow results as much as rhetoric, and Dutch is prepared to deliver both. Despite these successes, Dutch remains acutely aware of the dangers inherent in modern crime. Rival crews, unpredictable law enforcement, and the volatile ambitions of Los Santos players create a landscape that can turn on a dime. Dutch treats these dangers not as obstacles, but as variables to exploit. Every threat becomes an opportunity to assert influence, every confrontation a stage to showcase skill, and every alliance a tool to manipulate outcomes. His understanding of risk has evolved. He calculates, anticipates, and leverages it to solidify his growing power. By the end of this phase, Dutch has not only adapted to modern crime, but has begun to dominate it in his own way. Vehicles, weapons, technology, and human networks all serve as extensions of his will, guided by decades of experience and sharpened by the lessons of Los Santos. He is transformed from a relic of the past into a strategist for the present, a master manipulator who blends old-world cunning with modern precision. The city has begun to recognize his presence, his influence stretching subtly through streets, alleys, and boardrooms. Dutch van der Linde has adapted, and the foundations of his modern empire are quietly but inexorably forming. Dutch knows that to truly master Los Santos, small operations are not enough. The city is a living organism, constantly shifting and evolving, and influence must be asserted boldly to command attention. He begins planning his first large-scale modern operation, a heist that combines everything he has learned: Trevor's chaotic instinct, Michael's meticulous planning, Franklin's street-smart adaptability, and his own strategic oversight. The target is high value and heavily protected, requiring precision, timing, and coordination across multiple fronts. Dutch approaches it as he would a frontier campaign, surveying every angle, anticipating every contingency, and orchestrating every movement with near-obsessive care. Preparation becomes a lesson in modern adaptation. Dutch studies security systems, GPS routes, police patterns, and gang territories. He maps escape routes, considers alternative strategies for unexpected events, and coordinates communication across multiple channels. The city itself becomes his chessboard, and every street, alley, and intersection is a piece to be leveraged. Trevor is briefed with a focus on improvisation, Michael on contingency and control, and Franklin on urban navigation and resource acquisition. Dutch allows each of them autonomy within their areas of expertise, creating a dynamic where the team's individual strengths are amplified without overshadowing the overall strategy. The operation begins at dawn. Dutch watches from a vantage point, his eyes tracking every movement. Trevor handles the initial chaos with reckless brilliance, creating diversions that draw attention away from the heist's true objective. Michael executes the carefully laid plan with precision, manipulating timing, security measures, and logistics to perfection. Franklin navigates the city streets, avoiding patrols, intercepting targets, and ensuring smooth coordination between teams. Dutch's role is subtle but vital. He reads the flow of events, adjusts timing when necessary, and provides guidance that feels instinctive rather than imposed. Every element of the heist is a demonstration of his adaptation: old-world leadership, modern technology, and human manipulation combined seamlessly. Complications arise, as they inevitably do in Los Santos. Rival gangs appear unexpectedly, police units intercept the wrong route, and a mechanical failure threatens to derail the plan. Dutch remains calm. He redirects Trevor's energy toward a new distraction, instructs Michael to adjust logistics on the fly, and guides Franklin through a detour that preserves both safety and efficiency. Each intervention is measured, precise, and invisible. Dutch exerts influence without overt control, letting the team feel ownership of both decisions and success. The heist continues smoothly, tension building with every passing second until the final objective is achieved. When the operation concludes, the team gathers, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Trevor's chaotic respect for Dutch grows. He's seen firsthand that strategy does not stifle chaos but can harness it. Michael's calculated admiration deepens. He recognizes that Dutch understands both human behavior and operational efficiency in ways that rival even his own expertise. Franklin's loyalty begins to solidify, inspired by Dutch's guidance and the opportunities he presents for growth and influence. Dutch allows himself a quiet smile. The city has been tested, and he has passed the first real measure of modern mastery. Dutch does not linger in celebration. He begins analyzing the after effects. Rival gangs are reassessing their positions. Law enforcement is scrambling to respond to disruptions they cannot fully understand, and whispers of a new strategist in Los Santos begin circulating through the criminal underworld. Dutch sees patterns of influence forming. People are starting to act differently, alliances are shifting, and the balance of power is subtly tilting in his favor. He recognizes that domination is not brute force alone. It is manipulation, foresight, and timing all combined. Even in moments of solitude, Dutch reflects on the transformation he has undergone. Vehicles, firearms, technology, and city infrastructure are all mastered, but it is his ability to adapt, predict, and influence that truly sets him apart. The city that once seemed overwhelming now bends subtly to his vision. Los Santos is no longer simply a chaotic urban sprawl. It is a field in which Dutch can operate, experiment, and ultimately control. The lessons of the frontier have been reborn in the neon glow of the modern city, and Dutch van der Linde stands at the center, ready to shape it in his image. By nightfall, Dutch walks the streets with the quiet authority of someone who has survived worse and thrived, adapting instinctively to the challenges of modern crime. The trio, Trevor, Michael, and Franklin, now operate within the subtle framework Dutch has established, unaware of the full scope of influence that guides their actions. Los Santos hums with potential, rivalries simmer, and opportunities abound. Dutch van der Linde has not merely adapted, he has evolved. The city is his new frontier, and the seeds of power he has planted are ready to grow, quietly but inexorably, until Los Santos feels the full of his ambition. Los Santos is a city defined by power, influence, and territory, and Dutch van der Linde has arrived as an unfamiliar force threatening the established order. The gangs, crime bosses, and even corrupt officials are used to predictable patterns, but Dutch operates with a blend of audacity and calculated foresight that unsettles the city. He observes from the shadows as rival crews jockey for position, police units enforce their authority, and influential figures manipulate the system to maintain control. Dutch sees the landscape not as chaos, but as an opportunity. A battlefield where the strongest mind, not necessarily the strongest muscle, prevails. The first confrontation comes with a gang that controls a large swath of East Los Santos. Dutch has noticed that their influence over local businesses, drug routes, and street-level power is fragile, dependent on intimidation more than loyalty. He carefully engineers a small disruption, sending subtle signals that the gang's control is being watched and tested. Using Trevor's unpredictability to stir tension, Franklin's street knowledge to navigate key checkpoints, and Michael's planning to coordinate movements, Dutch demonstrates his ability to challenge authority without direct confrontation. The gang responds with aggression, but Dutch has anticipated their moves. He orchestrates a minor skirmish where the gang loses face without losing control, creating the illusion of vulnerability while subtly asserting his influence. News of Dutch's intervention spreads quickly. Rivals whisper about the stranger who manipulates events with uncanny precision. Even established crews begin to reassess their positions, unsure whether Dutch is an ally, a threat, or something in between. Dutch understands the power of reputation. Influence in Los Santos is as much about perception as action, and he cultivates a carefully crafted image, charismatic, capable, and untouchable when necessary. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin operate within his framework, executing his vision while maintaining the appearance of autonomy. Dutch has become a shadow presence, a strategist who manipulates outcomes from behind the scenes while the city reacts to his moves as if they were organic events. The next phase of Dutch's rise involves confronting more organized crime syndicates. These are groups with entrenched power, disciplined hierarchies, and deep connections. Dutch studies their operations meticulously, learning routines, weaknesses, and points of leverage. He begins orchestrating small disruptions, sabotage shipments, diverted deals, and carefully timed thefts that force rival crews to respond on his terms. Each operation is designed to test loyalty, measure adaptability, and establish Dutch's reputation as someone who cannot be ignored. The city is learning that Dutch van der Linde is not simply a new player. He is a force capable of reshaping the balance of power. Dutch's strategies extend beyond brute force or visible confrontations. He cultivates allies among low-level operators, informants, and street-level contacts who provide intelligence about rival movements, potential betrayals, and opportunities for influence. Every interaction, every favor, every subtle display of competence is leveraged to reinforce his position. Dutch blends psychological insight with operational skill, understanding that loyalty can be won through respect, fear, or shared ambition. He tests these approaches in small, controlled scenarios, observing reactions and adjusting strategy accordingly. Trevor's raw energy, Michael's precision, and Franklin's adaptability are all amplified under Dutch's guidance, allowing him to manipulate outcomes without ever overtly claiming credit. Even the city's law enforcement begins to notice Dutch's presence. Incidents that were once isolated, skirmishes between gangs, high-value thefts, and unexplained strategic disruptions, now show a pattern. Police analysts and detectives attempt to track the orchestrator, but Dutch's ability to predict responses and manipulate timing keeps him several steps ahead. He understands modern law enforcement as he understood the unpredictability of frontier militias, a force to be anticipated, exploited, and, when necessary, avoided. Dutch leverages this understanding to further destabilize rival crews while protecting his own operations. The first major test of Dutch's influence occurs when he orchestrates a citywide maneuver involving multiple rival gangs. The plan requires precision, timing, and careful manipulation of human behavior. Dutch uses Trevor to create controlled chaos in one district, drawing attention and resources away from a rival gang's primary base. Michael coordinates a heist to intercept critical shipments while ensuring law enforcement attention is minimized. Franklin navigates the urban terrain, moving personnel and vehicles in ways that confuse rivals and maintain the appearance of spontaneity. Dutch's hand is invisible, yet the results are unmistakable. Rival crews suffer setbacks, alliances begin to fray, and Dutch's influence over the team and the city solidifies. Dutch's psychological tactics are as powerful as his operational strategies. He sends messages through subtle acts, leaving symbols, influencing conversations, and creating situations where rivals question their own leadership and competence. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin each act as extensions of his influence, executing key actions without fully understanding their role in Dutch's larger strategy. The city begins to perceive a pattern. The orchestrated disruptions, the sudden shifts in power, the uncanny precision of events. And while the source remains a mystery, Dutch's reputation grows. By the end of this initial phase, Dutch van der Linde has shifted the balance of power in Los Santos. Gangs reassess their territories, crews reconsider loyalties, and law enforcement begins to sense a new force at work. Dutch has proven that modern crime, with all its technology, speed, and complexity, can be mastered through strategy, influence, and the subtle orchestration of human behavior. He has taken the first step toward domination not by brute force, but by reshaping perception, manipulating rivalries, and demonstrating the advantages of his leadership to those willing to follow. As Dutch cements his presence in Los Santos, the city begins to respond to him in ways both visible and subtle. Rival crews no longer act with the same confidence, their usual operations disrupted by incidents that seem calculated but lack an identifiable source. Dutch understands that fear and uncertainty can be as effective as direct confrontation. He allows whispers of his influence to circulate, carefully cultivating a reputation for intelligence and unpredictability. Trevor revels in the chaos, executing Dutch's diversions with reckless precision, while Michael and Franklin maintain order and coordination, giving structure to what might otherwise be uncontrollable. Together they operate as a unit, though only Dutch truly sees the full scope of the strategy. The next major challenge arises from one of the city's most organized criminal syndicates. They control multiple territories, possess advanced weaponry, and maintain a network of insiders within both law enforcement and the business world. Dutch recognizes that direct assault would be reckless. Instead, he studies their operations, maps their routines, and identifies vulnerabilities. He engineers a series of small disruptions, intercepted shipments, manipulated communications, and targeted diversions that create tension within their ranks. Rivalries within the syndicate are amplified, leaders are forced into reactive decisions, and confidence in their control begins to erode. Dutch does not appear in these operations. His presence is felt, unseen but undeniable. Dutch's psychological strategies continue to evolve. He leverages the city's social networks, the flow of information, and the ambitions of minor players to his advantage. By subtly influencing who gets what intel, which crew receives which tip, and how rumors are spread, Dutch begins to shape the city's perception of power. Rivals question their alliances, underestimate threats, and inadvertently act in ways that favor Dutch's emergent network. Even law enforcement, responding to a series of perfectly timed disruptions, finds itself misdirected, always a step behind. Dutch is no longer merely adapting to the modern city. He is manipulating it. Tension begins to build among Trevor, Michael, and Franklin as well. Dutch understands that human dynamics are as critical as territorial control. Trevor's impulsive loyalty clashes occasionally with Michael's calculated approach, and Franklin's ambition makes him cautious, yet eager for opportunity. Dutch uses these tensions strategically, allowing controlled conflicts to test judgment, loyalty, and adaptability. Each small disagreement becomes a lesson in trust and decision-making. Dutch observes quietly, letting the trio resolve issues while subtly steering outcomes toward his advantage. The team grows stronger, more synchronized, and increasingly reliant on Dutch's guidance, even if they don't fully recognize it. The stakes rise when Dutch engineers a direct confrontation with the syndicate's leadership. He orchestrates an operation that requires simultaneous actions across multiple city districts, combining diversionary tactics, infiltration, and intelligence gathering. Trevor leads a dramatic street-level distraction. Michael coordinates the timing of the syndicate's shipments, and Franklin executes critical navigation and interception maneuvers. Dutch, always observing from above, adjusts the plan in real time, redirecting resources, exploiting errors, and ensuring that the operation succeeds flawlessly. The syndicate suffers losses that destabilize their control, shaking confidence and forcing them to reassess their position. By the conclusion of this coordinated strike, Dutch has demonstrated a mastery over both human behavior and city infrastructure. Rival syndicates, once confident in their dominance, now perceive a new, unseen force capable of undermining authority without revealing itself. Dutch's influence over Trevor, Michael, and Franklin solidifies further, the trio now functioning as extension of his strategy rather than independent actors. Los Santos begins to bend to his will, not through fear alone, but through calculated demonstration of skill, foresight, and control. Dutch has shown that power in this city is won through intelligence and manipulation as much as it is through firepower. Even as he consolidates influence, Dutch remains patient, recognizing that full dominance requires timing and careful orchestration. He allows rival crews and syndicates to underestimate him, to act rashly, and to expose weaknesses without realizing they are being guided into his hands. Dutch observes every reaction, every misstep, and every alliance formed in response to his maneuvers. The city becomes a network of pawns and pieces, each move calculated, each outcome anticipated. Dutch van der Linde is no longer just a participant in Los Santos. He is the hidden hand shaping its power structure, a strategist unmatched in vision and execution. By nightfall, Dutch surveys the city from a high vantage point, the neon glow reflecting off his eyes as he considers the next moves. He knows that further challenges await. Rival factions will regroup, law enforcement will become more vigilant, and Trevor, Michael, and Franklin will need careful management to maintain loyalty and efficiency. Yet Dutch smiles quietly, confident that he has mastered the first critical phase of his rise. Los Santos may. Dutch knows that subtle influence can only carry him so far. To truly assert dominance over Los Santos, he must confront its power players directly, demonstrating that his presence is not only strategic but unavoidable. He identifies key rival gang leaders, syndicate heads, and corrupt officials whose control over the city has gone unchallenged for years. Dutch studies their routines, their alliances, and even their weaknesses, crafting scenarios where their authority is undermined without exposing himself to unnecessary risk. He understands that fear, respect, and uncertainty are more potent than brute force when wielded correctly. The first high-stakes confrontation occurs in a contested district of South Los Santos. Dutch observes as two rival gangs compete over territory and resources, both unaware of his involvement. Using Franklin's street-level knowledge, Trevor's controlled chaos, and Michael's precise coordination, Dutch orchestrates an operation that manipulates both gangs into making critical errors. Shipments are intercepted, rival communications are scrambled, and a minor but symbolic location changes hands overnight. The gangs wake to the reality that someone is operating above their understanding, someone who can predict, manipulate, and control outcomes without being seen. Dutch's reputation spreads further, whispered in back alleys and barber shops, a name that inspires curiosity, respect, and fear in equal measure. Rival factions begin to test their limits, attempting to strike back at the mysterious strategist, disrupting their operations. Dutch anticipates these moves with uncanny precision. He uses misdirection, decoys, and carefully timed interventions to allow them to expend resources and reveal vulnerabilities. Trevor's impulsive energy becomes a tool for creating visible chaos, while Michael's meticulous planning ensures no real damage is done to Dutch's interests. Franklin serves as the adaptable liaison, moving quickly through the urban sprawl to secure resources and maintain coordination. Each confrontation reinforces Dutch's position as a force that is impossible to ignore, capable of turning aggression into opportunity. Dutch also begins exploiting the internal politics of rival gangs and syndicates. He observes jealousies, grudges, and ambitions, and subtly manipulates them to fracture alliances. A leader who was once secure in his power begins to question his lieutenants. Internal disputes erupt over decisions that Dutch has orchestrated from behind the scenes. He allows rivalries to grow, carefully monitoring the outcomes and positioning himself as a neutral but indispensable observer whose guidance can prevent further chaos. Dutch understands that control is not merely about defeating opponents. It is about reshaping the structure of influence so that others act in ways that serve his objectives without direct orders. Even Los Santos's law enforcement feels the impact of Dutch's maneuvers. While the police scramble to respond to the increasingly sophisticated disruptions, Dutch manipulates the timing and placement of operations to maximize confusion. Checkpoints are bypassed, surveillance is misled, and miscommunications between units create delays that rival gangs cannot exploit. Dutch treats the city's police as a variable to manipulate rather than a direct threat, understanding that anticipation and timing are more powerful than confrontation. His mastery of the city's systems combined with human psychology gives him a level of control few could imagine. The tension reaches a peak when Dutch orchestrates a multi-layered heist involving the city's wealthiest syndicate. The plan requires simultaneous operations across multiple districts, a diversion in the industrial sector, a high-speed interception in the financial district, and a precise extraction of resources from a heavily guarded facility. Trevor thrives in the chaos, leading unpredictable actions that draw attention and keep rivals off balance. Michael coordinates the logistics, ensuring that timing, positioning, and contingencies align perfectly. Franklin navigates traffic, security, and urban hazards, moving personnel and vehicles with unmatched precision. Dutch oversees the operation from a vantage point, adjusting on the fly, predicting rival responses, and nudging the outcome toward flawless execution. The operation succeeds beyond expectations, delivering a symbolic and material blow to the syndicate. Rival factions are forced to acknowledge Dutch's presence as a serious threat, while his team gains confidence and cohesion under his subtle leadership. Dutch's influence has grown beyond mere reputation. He now commands a network capable of executing complex, coordinated operations across the city. His ability to blend traditional cunning with modern tools to manipulate both human behavior and urban systems establishes him as a strategist unmatched in Los Santos. Even in the aftermath, Dutch does not rest. He studies the responses of his rivals, law enforcement, and even his own team, noting what worked and what vulnerabilities remain. He anticipates retaliation, prepares contingency plans, and subtly positions his growing network to absorb any challenges. Dutch understands that dominance is not a single achievement, but a continuous process of observation, adaptation, and strategic pressure. Every interaction, every disruption, every subtle act of influence serves to tighten his grip on the city without exposing the full extent of his power. By the end of this phase, Dutch van der Linde is transformed from a mysterious outsider into a central figure in Los Santos's power structure. Rival gangs hesitate before acting, syndicates second-guess their strategies, and law enforcement struggles to interpret the patterns he creates. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are fully integrated into his operations, their skills amplified by his guidance, their loyalty shaped by both respect and necessity. Dutch has proven that modern crime, no matter how complex or fast-paced, can be mastered through foresight, manipulation, and precision. The city may not yet fully understand him, but it is beginning to bend to his influence. Dutch van der Linde knows that influence is not static. Even after repeated successes, Los Santos's power players are far from defeated. Syndicates regroup, gangs form uneasy alliances, and law enforcement begins to strategize against the mysterious force disrupting the city. Dutch observes it all with calm calculation, understanding that domination is a continuous process, not a single victory. Every movement, every response from rivals, and every slip of the police is noted, analyzed, and turned into an opportunity. The city itself becomes his chessboard, and every piece moves according to the rules he silently imposes. Dutch begins orchestrating operations that are not only tactical but symbolic, sending clear messages to rivals about who truly commands the streets. In one carefully engineered confrontation, rival gangs are drawn into a staged clash that looks chaotic to outsiders but is meticulously controlled. Trevor leads the frontal assault, embodying raw energy and unpredictability. Michael ensures that timing, positioning, and contingencies align flawlessly, making every move precise. Franklin navigates the terrain, extracting critical assets and neutralizing potential threats before they can escalate. Dutch directs from a distance, adjusting strategies in real time, ensuring that the outcome demonstrates his superiority without ever appearing as the orchestrator. The psychological impact on Los Santos power players is profound. Gang leaders second-guess their decisions, syndicate heads fear exposure, and law enforcement struggles to make sense of patterns that defy logic. Dutch has transformed the city into a network of manipulated events where perception is as crucial as reality. He allows misinformation, staged incidents, and carefully timed chaos to undermine confidence, leaving rivals unsure of who or what controls the unfolding events. In this environment, Dutch's presence is everywhere and nowhere at once. Omnipresent in effect, invisible in appearance. As Dutch's reputation grows, he begins consolidating alliances, bringing opportunistic gangs and individual criminals into his orbit. Each new contact is tested, observed, and subtly influenced to ensure loyalty. Dutch does not demand obedience. He earns it through demonstrated competence, mutual benefit, and carefully orchestrated successes. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin become exemplars of his method, operating with autonomy but guided by a framework only Dutch fully understands. The team evolves into a force capable of executing complex operations, exploiting rival weaknesses, and expanding influence with minimal exposure. The next phase of Dutch's strategy involves a coordinated strike against multiple syndicate strongholds simultaneously. This operation requires every skill he has adapted to the modern city: surveillance disruption, street-level coordination, high-speed transportation, and manipulation of human behavior. Trevor creates controlled chaos to distract security forces, Michael executes the logistical backbone of the plan, and Franklin ensures the seamless movement of resources and personnel. Dutch oversees from a vantage point, predicting rival reactions, adjusting contingencies, and nudging outcomes with subtle interventions. The operation unfolds flawlessly, leaving syndicates disoriented, rival leaders humiliated, and Dutch's influence undeniable. Dutch also begins leveraging indirect power, turning former adversaries into instruments of his strategy without their knowledge. He plants suggestions, orchestrates encounters, and subtly shifts alliances, creating a web of influence that grows stronger with every move. Even law enforcement officers unknowingly contribute to Dutch's designs, misinterpreting events and inadvertently reinforcing his strategic position. Dutch's mastery lies in his ability to remain unseen while orchestrating outcomes on a citywide scale, proving that the mind is more powerful than any weapon. By the end of this period, Dutch has transformed Los Santos' landscape. Rival gangs hesitate before acting, syndicates rethink alliances, and law enforcement scrambles to interpret a force they cannot define. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are fully integrated into Dutch's network, their loyalty, skills, and ambitions aligned with his vision. Dutch has established control not through brute force alone, but through anticipation, influence, and the meticulous orchestration of events. The city itself bends to his will, unaware of the extent of his power. Dutch stands on a high-rise overlooking the city, the neon glow reflecting in his eyes. The streets below hum with activity, yet every move has been influenced, every outcome shaped, and every power structure subtly realigned. Los Santos has become a city under Dutch's unseen command, a living testament to strategy, patience, and calculated audacity. Dutch van der Linde has not only survived the modern criminal world, but has begun to master it in ways the city has never witnessed. The stage is set, the pieces are in motion, and Dutch's next moves promise to reshape Los Santos completely. Before we dive into the final outcome, take a moment to imagine the city of Los Santos completely reshaped by a single mind, a presence that moves unseen, yet whose influence is felt in every alley, every high-rise, and every gang-controlled corner. Dutch van der Linde has survived the Wild West, mastered the modern criminal world, and now stands at the pinnacle of influence in a city designed to overwhelm outsiders. But mastery is never a static achievement. It is a constant negotiation between ambition, loyalty, and risk. As Dutch surveys the sprawling metropolis from the top of a Vinewood skyscraper, he contemplates not only what he has accomplished, but the legacy he is creating. The first tangible outcome of Dutch's influence is a city visibly altered by his strategic hand. Rival gangs and syndicates have been fractured, some absorbed into his orbit, others neutralized or displaced. Law enforcement operates with confusion, unable to trace the source of the organized disruptions that have destabilized criminal operations citywide. Even the smaller street-level operators have begun to recognize Dutch's unseen guidance, acting in ways that suggest a higher order behind the chaos. Los Santos, once a patchwork of competing factions, now functions under subtle orchestration. The rhythm of the streets and the flow of power bend into Dutch's strategic vision. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are transformed as well. Trevor has become a living instrument of chaos, his impulsive energy honed and directed to serve larger objectives. Michael's precision and patience now operate within Dutch's grander framework, giving structure to operations that might otherwise spiral into failure. Franklin, agile, adaptive, and ambitious, has learned to anticipate both Dutch's expectations and the city's unpredictable variables, moving in tandem with an unseen conductor. The trio is no longer merely a team executing heists. They are extensions of Dutch's influence, each capable of independent action, yet inherently guided by his vision. Their loyalty is cemented not by fear or coercion, but by recognition of Dutch's unmatched strategic mind and the opportunities he provides for them to thrive. Dutch's mastery is not limited to operational control. It extends to the perception of power itself. His reputation precedes him in whispers through alleys, backrooms, and corporate offices. Gang members hesitate before acting, unsure whether they are responding to a rival or to Dutch's calculated orchestration. Syndicate leaders second-guess their alliances, wary that any move could be anticipated and exploited. Even law enforcement, for all its technology and manpower, finds itself consistently a step behind. Dutch has learned that influence is a combination of skill, timing, and the careful shaping of perception, and he wields it with a precision that leaves the city unsure who truly controls events. The culmination of Dutch's efforts is a single, audacious operation that cements his dominance. He orchestrates a citywide heist and territorial realignment, combining elements of distraction, strategic engagement, and psychological manipulation. Rival factions are drawn into controlled confrontations that test their loyalties and expose vulnerabilities. Law enforcement is misdirected in a series of meticulously timed incidents that minimize risk while maximizing impact. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin execute their roles flawlessly, their actions amplified by Dutch's foresight. The operation succeeds on multiple levels, reshaping power structures, establishing Dutch as an unchallenged influence, and demonstrating his unmatched ability to blend chaos with strategy. Dutch does not seek to rule through fear alone. He understands that sustainable control relies on loyalty, mutual respect, and the perception of competence. He allows factions to retain autonomy under his guidance, providing the illusion of freedom while ensuring that outcomes align with his broader vision. He subtly rewards compliance and punishes missteps in ways that maintain morale while reinforcing his influence. Dutch has transformed Los Santos into a network of guided actors, each unaware that they are part of a larger invisible strategy, and yet each acting in ways that fortify his position. The city itself reflects Dutch's imprint. Streets operate with a new rhythm, rivalries are recalibrated, and alliances have shifted in ways that favor stability under his subtle guidance. Small operators gain confidence in their alignment with Dutch's emerging network. Syndicates reluctantly respect his strategic mind, and law enforcement is left piecing together a puzzle whose central figure remains elusive. Dutch has not merely survived in Los Santos, he has reshaped it, creating an environment where influence, cunning, and foresight dictate the flow of power. Dutch van der Linde's influence in Los Santos extends beyond immediate operations. The city begins to function in subtle ways, that reflect his strategic mind, even when he is not physically present. Rival factions act with caution, their decisions tempered by the uncertainty Dutch was instilled. Syndicate leaders, once arrogant in their control of the city, hesitate before committing resources, knowing that any misstep could be exploited. Street-level operators move with an awareness of unseen forces, adjusting behavior in ways that reinforce Dutch's overarching influence. The city itself has become a reflection of his presence, a living, breathing network subtly guided by his strategic vision. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin continue to evolve under Dutch's guidance. Trevor, once pure chaos incarnate, has learned to channel his impulsive energy into high-impact actions that serve both immediate and long-term objectives. Michael's planning and precision now operate on a larger scale, integrating citywide intelligence and strategic timing, making him an indispensable lieutenant in Dutch's network. Franklin, whose street savvy and adaptability have always been his strengths, now moves with foresight and anticipation, executing maneuvers that align perfectly with Dutch's vision while retaining the edge of unpredictability that makes him so valuable. Together, the trio functions as an extension of Dutch's mind, capable of operating independently, yet inherently synchronized with his objectives. Rival gangs and syndicates attempt to adapt to Dutch's presence, but his combination of foresight, manipulation, and subtle control keeps them perpetually off balance. Dutch has learned to anticipate not only their actions, but their reactions to his actions, creating a dynamic where each response plays directly into his strategy. He engineers incidents that appear spontaneous, but are meticulously calculated to reinforce his dominance. Law enforcement, though increasingly aware of the patterns of disruption, struggles to pinpoint a source, leaving Dutch free to expand his influence without direct confrontation. In every corner of Los Santos, from Vinewood to East Los Santos, Dutch's unseen hand shapes events, ensuring that power flows according to his design. Dutch's legacy begins to take a form that goes beyond control. It becomes an idea, a force that persists even in his absence. Rival leaders begin to warn their own crews of the unseen strategist operating in the city, spreading fear and respect simultaneously. Whispered stories of Dutch van der Lene's uncanny foresight circulated in alleys, bars, and warehouses, creating a mythos around his persona. The perception of omnipresence amplifies his influence far beyond his direct actions, reinforcing loyalty among his allies and hesitation among adversaries. Dutch understands that legend is as powerful a tool as strategy, and he cultivates it with subtlety, allowing the city to internalize his dominance as both tangible and intangible. At the same time, Dutch reflects on the transformation of his team. He recognizes that loyalty is fragile and must be maintained through shared success, mutual respect, and recognition of skill. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are not just operatives. They are partners in influence, each contributing unique abilities to reinforce Dutch's network. He subtly rewards competence, demonstrates patience with mistakes, and orchestrates opportunities that allow the trio to grow in capability and confidence. In doing so, Dutch ensures that his legacy is not built solely on fear or intimidation, but on respect and demonstrated mastery. The cumulative effect of Dutch's actions is a city that bends to his influence without overt domination. Power structures shift quietly, rivalries fracture, and opportunities for rebellion are carefully mitigated before they fully materialize. Dutch's mastery is evident not just in the outcomes of operations, but in the behavioral patterns of the city's inhabitants. Criminals hesitate before acting, law enforcement moves cautiously, and even neutral parties adjust their behavior in anticipation of his strategic presence. Dutch has created an ecosystem where every player, knowingly or unknowingly, acts in ways that reinforce his position. By now, Dutch van der Linde has transitioned from an outsider to a central figure in the consciousness of Los Santos. His legacy is taking root not only in the physical control of territory and operations, but in the perception of inevitability he creates. Rival factions learn to act cautiously, avoiding direct conflict and minimizing exposure. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin function as his extensions, executing complex maneuvers that multiply his influence across the city. Dutch's presence is both invisible and undeniable, a force that shapes events without appearing to dictate them directly. Dutch van der Linde's influence in Los Santos reaches a tipping point as his strategies begin to produce irreversible effects. Rival gangs, once confident in their territories, now hesitate to act without first assessing whether they are walking into Dutch's orchestrated maneuvers. Syndicate leaders, even those who once dismissed him as an outsider, now treat every decision with caution, aware that any misstep could be exploited to strengthen Dutch's position. The city is learning, slowly but surely, that Dutch van der Linde is no ordinary criminal mind. He is a strategist whose reach extends far beyond the visible chaos of heists and confrontations. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin operate with a level of autonomy that reflects Dutch's mastery as a leader. Trevor channels his chaos into controlled operations that unsettle rivals and draw attention away from Dutch's larger designs. Michael manages logistics and contingencies across multiple operations, ensuring that every step aligns with the overarching strategy. Franklin, ever adaptable, moves through the streets with precision, exploiting weaknesses in rival gangs and leveraging information that only Dutch could have anticipated. Each member of the team has evolved under Dutch's guidance, their loyalty reinforced not by fear, but by the undeniable success of his leadership. Dutch begins implementing more permanent structural changes to the criminal ecosystem of Los Santos. Key rivals are neutralized not necessarily through elimination, but through careful manipulation, co-optation, and strategic positioning. Former adversaries are absorbed into his network, incentivized by subtle benefits and the implicit understanding that cooperation yields greater gains than resistance. Dutch does not seek to destroy the city's power structures entirely. Rather, he reshapes them, ensuring that influence flows through channels that ultimately reinforce his dominance. His understanding of human psychology, alliances, and ambition allows him to craft a system where stability and obedience emerge naturally from perception rather than coercion. The culmination of Dutch's influence comes in a citywide operation designed to solidify his position as an unchallenged strategist. Multiple syndicates are drawn into coordinated maneuvers, miscommunications are amplified, and key power players are forced into choices that benefit Dutch without fully realizing it. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin execute their roles flawlessly, each maneuver serving to reinforce Dutch's reputation while subtly eliminating threats. By the end of the operation, rival factions are destabilized, alliances have shifted, and Dutch's network has expanded across every district of the city. The streets, boardrooms, and back alleys of Los Santos all bear the mark of his strategy, and the city itself has become an extension of his vision. Dutch's approach to legacy is as calculated as his operations. He ensures that the perception of his influence persists even in his absence. Strategic placements, manipulated information, and orchestrated outcomes create an environment where the city behaves in ways that reinforce his dominance automatically. Rival factions act cautiously, anticipating his interventions even when he is not present. Allies act in alignment with his broader vision, their decisions informed by trust in his leadership and recognition of his skill. Los Santos has become a city guided by Dutch's unseen hand, and the legacy he is creating is self-perpetuating. At the same time, Dutch reflects on the human element of his journey. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin have become more than operatives. They are partners, extensions of his mind, and proof that leadership is measured not only by success, but by the capacity to cultivate loyalty, skill, and independence within a team. Dutch recognizes that legacy is not simply about power. It is about shaping the people around him, leaving an enduring mark on both the city and those who operate within it. His mentorship ensures that his influence will persist even if he is no longer directly involved in daily operations. Dutch's presence begins to enter the realm of legend. Stories of his cunning, foresight, and strategic brilliance spread through Los Santos, whispered in alleys, recounted in bars, and discussed in criminal forums. He becomes a figure that inspires both fear and admiration, an almost mythical force whose existence is felt more than seen. This perception amplifies his real-world influence, reinforcing loyalty among allies and hesitation among adversaries. Dutch understands that legend and reality are intertwined, and he carefully cultivates both to ensure that his control extends far beyond immediate actions. By now, Dutch van der Linde has transformed Los Santos into a city that functions according to his strategic vision. Rival gangs operate with caution, syndicates defer decisions, and law enforcement constantly recalibrates in response to incidents they cannot fully predict. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are fully integrated into his network, each operating with autonomy yet aligned with his overarching objectives. Dutch's influence is no longer temporary or situational. It has become an enduring framework within which the city now operates. The outcomes of his actions reverberate across the criminal landscape, shaping behavior, decisions, and alliances long after the immediate operations are complete. Dutch van der Linde's presence in Los Santos has now evolved from mere influence to a permanent legacy. The city itself seems to move with a rhythm he has subtly orchestrated, a balance between chaos and order that he alone fully understands. Rival factions, once brash and unyielding, now operate with caution, second-guessing their own decisions as if an unseen strategist watches their every move. Syndicate leaders defer critical choices, weighing the potential unseen consequences of each action. Even law enforcement, equipped with the latest technology and resources, finds itself consistently outmaneuvered, misdirected, and left scrambling for explanations. Dutch has created a world in which control is exercised not through fear alone, but through the perception of inevitability. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin have become embodiments of Dutch's vision. Trevor, with his chaotic energy now refined, acts as the unpredictable force that keeps rivals off balance and provides opportunities for broader operations. Michael's meticulous planning ensures that every move, whether small or large, is executed with precision and timing, serving Dutch's larger strategy while maintaining the appearance of independent initiative. Franklin navigates the urban landscape with foresight and flexibility, bridging gaps, coordinating critical movements, and exploiting opportunities that only someone with Dutch's insight could anticipate. The trio's loyalty is complete, shaped not by coercion, but by respect, trust, and the recognition that Dutch's mind can outthink any rival or obstacle the city throws at them. Dutch's influence extends beyond immediate operations to the very psychology of Los Santos. Even in moments of calm, the city operates according to patterns he has embedded. Criminals act cautiously, anticipating his presence even when he is absent. Gangs that once competed fiercely now hesitate, carefully calculating each action. Syndicate members analyze situations twice, unsure if a decision could trigger a strategic response they cannot predict. Every corner of the city reflects the subtle guidance of Dutch's vision, the invisible architecture of influence that shapes behavior, alliances, and rivalries alike. The long-term legacy Dutch leaves is as much about perception as it is about action. Stories of his cunning, foresight, and ability to manipulate outcomes without appearing to act have begun to circulate in whispers and rumors. He becomes more than a strategist. He becomes a legend, a figure whose presence is felt even when absent. These stories reinforce loyalty among his allies and hesitation among adversaries, creating a self-sustaining network of influence. Dutch understands that legend amplifies reality, and he cultivates it with care, ensuring that the city recognizes both the tangible and intangible power he wields. As the dust settles, Dutch surveys the city one last time from a high vantage point, the neon glow reflecting in his eyes. Los Santos has been transformed under his unseen hand. Rival factions have recalibrated their strategies, the balance of power has shifted, and his team operates with unparalleled cohesion and loyalty. Dutch has proven that true mastery of the modern criminal world relies not only on force, but on anticipation, manipulation, and the ability to inspire both fear and respect. His journey from frontier strategist to modern mastermind is complete, and the city bears his mark in ways both visible and hidden. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin continue their lives knowing they are part of something larger, their skills honed, their loyalty solidified, and their futures intertwined with Dutch's vision. Los Santos will never forget the impact of Dutch van der Linde, a man who adapted, evolved, and mastered a city designed to challenge anyone daring enough to control it. The legacy he leaves is not merely territorial or financial. It is a testament to strategy, foresight, and the power of influence. Dutch has transformed the city, shaped its inhabitants, and ensured that his presence will resonate long after the dust of his operations has settled. As the city hums below, Dutch turns away from the skyline, a quiet smile crossing his face. He knows that power is never permanent, that challenges will arise, and that loyalty must always be nurtured. Yet in this moment, he allows himself the satisfaction of mastery. A man who has not just survived Los Santos, but has reshaped it according to his vision. The streets, the alleys, the skyscrapers, and even the whispers in the back rooms all carry the imprint of Dutch van der Linde, a legacy that will echo through the city for years to come. And with that, the story of Dutch in Los Santos reaches its conclusion. From a stranger stepping into a modern city to a master strategist whose influence touches every corner, Dutch van der Linde has left an indelible mark on GTA 5's world. If you enjoyed seeing how a legendary figure from another era could adapt, evolve, and dominate a city as chaotic as Los Santos, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more what-if scenarios. Before you go, tell me in the comments, which other characters would you like to see stepping into GTA 5, and how do you think they'd change the game? Your ideas might just inspire the next video.